Uh, yes, I do. I believe they should be brought into Australia because they are they're persecuted for their beliefs, their race, and their religion. So if we don't bring them in, then they'll get killed. I think it will go on for as long as there is inequality in the world. So people in Africa want to go to England because they can get a better, they can earn more money, they can help their family. It's gone on for as long as it has, most probably because of the difference in inequality in the world. Poverty and yeah. Well, you need to first bring them in, no matter what their race, religion, or political ideology is. You need to be able to accept them, convert them to Western society. Uh, it's caused by carbon emissions produced by cars and factories, and overuse of electricity by humans. We can cut down on global warming by reducing our output. We can use energy efficient light bulbs and stuff, and clean renewable energy such as wind and water. Hmm. Well, first there'll be the a lot of ice will melt because of the Earth heating up, which is currently happening in Alaska, and sea levels will rise and places will become unlivable, such as like the Middle East, where it will become too hot for people to live. No, because I live in Greece, so I don't really feel the effects of global warming.
Yeah, I think Australia we should take in refugees because we're just like everyone else. We're all equal. We all deserve a place in our society, and just I think this will continue. Well, it really depends on like who's in control of like the government and whatnot. But like it's like it's about a point of view about people's personal opinion, like with their beliefs and their religion and political views. But I reckon just until everyone has the same idea of like equality, I guess. Well, because war and conflict all over the world, but mainly in Syria, it's like it's escalated and there's not been much done about it, and there's nothing being improved, and the people like their lives have not benefited from it, have benefited just by treating them as equal and like not sending them to a detention center or turning the boat around, but just like bring them in and making sure they're taken care of and giving them homes and like getting rid of the discrimination against them, prejudice. Global warming is caused by many factors, such as just like pollution, like mainly from like industrialization and urbanization, just from mass production of products and uplifting of resources, but also because of greenhouse gases like just the methane and carbon dioxide and water vapor. Just the easiest way, because such we have since we have such a large population, just using confined like transportation, like using different modes of transportation like a bus or riding a bike, and just lessening our carbon emissions and just like our individual footprint. Increasing population and technology advancing is like people rely on it more, and some people don't believe that it's actually happening, and that if they don't have an individual effect on the warming. Personally, I am not affected by this issue at a current time, but for future generations, like if this continues, it will be very prominent in their society.
Yes, I think Australia should take in refugees. I believe we should take in refugees because we're a first world country. We are reasonably well off in relation to the rest of the world and many other countries in the world. We're a country who can offer shelter to people who are in need of shelter. We're a country who can improve our we can offer the infrastructure, we can offer education, and hopefully offer jobs and give people opportunities to make a new life. I think we're very fortunate. We have a lot of space, even though Australia's population is relatively condensed on the coast, there's still a lot of space and a lot of sparseness and sparsely populated areas. So there are plenty of areas that could have an increased population where we could try to develop more industry, more jobs, try and entice people to go to these areas. And I just think it is our moral duty to contribute to the current crisis that's occurring in Europe and in the rest of the world. How long do I think the problems of refugees will go on for around the world? I guess people have been seeking refuge for centuries and probably since time began. I think, unfortunately, it's probably always going to be the case. There's probably always going to be areas in the world where people are in strife, people are fleeing violence or fleeing persecution, because historically that has happened. You know, in every sort of century, we've had persecutors and we've had people who've been persecuted. There's been demagogues, there's been tyrants, and unfortunately, despite the fact that we like to think we've progressed, and we have progressed in many respects, unfortunately humans will always be humans. And I think with that there will always be people who try to, I guess, win their way or have their wishes granted, and whether through means of violence, through means of being a demagogue, tyrant, whatever means they think they may be able to use to get their way and to have their beliefs or their greed fulfilled. There's always going to be religious disputes and racist disputes and various reasons for people to need refuge. I think as long as there's poverty in the world as well and lack of education in certain areas, that will probably always be the case, sadly. Okay, why has this current problem gone on for so long? I guess it's been fairly acute for the last 4 or 5 years, and particularly in the last year. We're talking about the Syrian crisis. I think in a way the world was unaware of what was going on in Syria for quite a long time. Certain people were aware of it, but I think it just was quietly brewing and actually quietly happening, and the world wasn't aware of how bad things were. I think too that there have been problems probably boiling up in various pockets around Europe for a long time. And unfortunately, despite several attempts to sort of solve these problems, as soon as one problem in the Middle East seems to be sort of starting to resolve, another seems to arise somewhere else. It seems, that particular area seems to be a bit of a hotspot for, tyrants and persecutors, possibly, and I think very probably also influenced by other big powers and other countries who have perhaps profited from being involved in these countries in the past. I think we can welcome these people. We can, the best thing we can do for them is to enable them and assist in their education and their assimilation into Australian life through perhaps language teaching, various opportunities, various educational opportunities that might be able to be offered to them, provide them with social and medical help, vocational assistance, as I said before, to try to get them into jobs, get them educated, and assimilate their children into our schools. And just help them in whatever way we can. Okay, what do I think causes global warming? Increased pollution, increased gas emissions, large carbon footprints, methane gas, apparently, lots of cows, but perhaps some of the high agricultural areas, excess use of our resources and wasting of our resources. I think we can reduce our impact on global warming or our contribution by reducing our pollution. In that way, walking more, bike riding more, using less electricity, turning our machines off, turning our lights off, reducing our water usage, and basically just trying to protect our resources and stop wasting valuable resources. And I guess if each household tries to do their bit, you know, that accumulative effort will help reduce our carbon footprint on the world, and hopefully our effect on our exacerbation of greenhouse gases. That would be one way to start. Well, there seems to be evidence to suggest that our water levels are rising, so that certainly affects, well, in particular, even our neighbours, the Pacific Islands, Papua New Guinea, that are made up of many low-level islands in the Pacific Ocean. Some of them are at risk of being regularly flooded and even washed away, some of their villages. Overall, we're losing valuable flora and fauna. There's the ice some of the ice is melting in the Antarctic, and that has an effect on both water levels, but also on wildlife and the whole food chain. I guess in general, just the quality of life will be reduced by this. The quality of our lives will ultimately be affected. So it's in our interest to try to reduce it. Well, it affects us all, I think. If certain parts of the world are being damaged and certain beautiful areas are being damaged, that's lost for generations to come. And of course it'll affect us in terms of we want to leave a good earth for our children and for our grandchildren. I guess this generation is not as impacted as the next generation will be, but it'll just become worse and worse. And none of us, of course, I don't want that for my children. So I feel obliged I'd like to try and do my bit, whether it be just reducing my use of plastic, keeping the lights off, recycling, trying not to use pesticides and pollutants as much as possible, and reduce my use of the car if possible. That's what I should be doing anyway.